Okay, hello. My name is Nikki Civitello. I am a graduate student in the psychology department here at UTA, and I'm going to talk to you about prospective memory deficits and their neural correlates in epilepsy. This is a study we are hoping to get started on in the fall. But basically, epilepsy is a neurological disorder that's characterized by recurrent seizures. In addition to seizure-related impairments, people with epilepsy frequently experience cognitive deficits, with retrospective memory impairments being well documented. However, prospective memory has been rarely studied in children with epilepsy, even though they are at a risk for prospective memory deficits due to seizures, medication effects, and executive dysfunction. So prospective memory is the ability to remember and execute future intentions, whereas a retrospective memory is basically the ability to remember past events. So prospective memory deals more with the future. Impairments in prospective memory are associated with worse functional outcomes and lower quality of life. And while prospective memory deficits in epilepsy have been reported in behavioral studies, there is no study that has examined their neural underpinnings using functional MRI, which is something this study hopes to do by investigating the neural mechanisms of prospective memory in epilepsy and focusing on how different prospective memory demands and reminder strategies influence performance. There are three main research aims that we have that are in the center of this poster here. The first one is to compare neural mechanisms of specific and non-specific prospective memory in generalized epilepsy. So specific prospective memory tasks will allow for more automatic retrieval, whereas non-specific will require greater strategic monitoring and prefrontal engagement. So for example, in that first figure, you see the word dog versus any animal. The specific task will have you have a specific target like the word dog, and a series of other words will pop up one at a time on the screen, and it's your job to remember which word is your specific target, and you will press a key every time you see that word. Whereas with non-specific, it'll give you a category like animal, and every time any type of animal pops up, that's when you'll press your key, something like parakeet, lion, dog, and it'll be filtered in with a bunch of other distractor words like vegetable, table, things like that. We hypothesize that our participants with epilepsy will show greater deficits in non-specific prospective memory with reduced activation in the prefrontal cortex and medial temporal lobe relative to controls. Our second research aim is to investigate the role of reminders on performance in generalized epilepsy. So in this second figure here, you can see with our specific and our non-specific tasks, with reminders, you will literally have the target word that you're supposed to look out for at the top of your screen, right? So this first computer here has the word table, which is not our target word, so you would click one key for that, and then when dog pops up, you can see here in our reminder that they match, and then you'll click a separate key for that because that's your target word that has now appeared. Versus with no reminders, it'll just be the words that filter on throughout the screen one at a time, and it's your job to remember which word is your target word and when you press the specific key. And the same thing happens for our non-specific tasks, but instead of, the specific word, now it's just the category. And now you have to remember the category, and any word that falls under that category, that's when you'll hit your specific key, and you'll have reminders where the word animals or your category will be at the top of the screen, and you'll have without reminders where it's just the words filtering through, and you have to remember which words to look for. So lastly, our hypothesis for that one is that our people with epilepsy will show a greater performance boost from reminders than our controls, with reduced reliance on prefrontal monitoring processes when reminders are available. Our last research aim is to examine the role of reminders on prospective memory performance in focal epilepsy. We will compare patients with temporal lobe epilepsy and extratemporal epilepsy. And the reason we do this is because our temporal lobe is pretty important when it comes to memory function. So if you have focal epilepsy or localized epilepsy in this area, it's very possible that you have memory deficits because of it. So we're going to compare individuals who have epilepsy in this specific area compared to people who don't have epilepsy in this area. And our hypothesis here is that individuals with temporal lobe epilepsy will exhibit greater prospective memory impairments and a stronger reliance on reminders with distinct neural activation patterns reflecting compensatory prefrontal engagement. So of course, we're going to be conducting this with our fMRI that we have here on campus, our 3 Tesla magnetic resonance imaging machine located in the Clinical Imaging Research Center. So it's very exciting that we will have access to this machine and we'll get to produce some research with it. But when it comes to impact and importance for this study will be the first to use fMRI to examine prospective memory in epilepsy, and the findings will have important implications for cognitive rehabilitation, clinical interventions, and improving daily functioning for individuals with epilepsy. Thank you so much for your time.